So this video is to give a bit of information about Kilbryde Hospice, and we're talking to Mary Louise Holdsworth, who's a registered nurse.
Yes. Thanks very much for having me along and having this discussion. I am Mary Louise, and I have been here at the hospice for the last 3 years, started during the pandemic. And my main remit is to work within the outpatient department with a specific responsibility for the day services.
Now, Kilbryde Hospice is based in East Kilbride, but covers the whole of South Lanarkshire.
It does. The name misleads people a little bit because it is Kilbryde Hospice, but we are not just for East Kilbride, and we're not part of Hare Myers Hospital. We do serve the whole of South Lanarkshire, so from Rutherglen to Clydesdale.
And importantly, it's not part of the National Health Service.
No, we get very limited guaranteed funding because we're not part of the NHS. So our services, we get some support from elsewhere, we get some grants. Most of it we have to apply for or fundraise for ourselves.
We'll cover fundraising later on. A lot of people presume that Kilbryde Hospice is purely for people who are patients and are staying in the hospital, but it's a bit more than that, isn't it?
It is. That's another one of the myths, that hospice life is really only for patients who have a diagnosis of cancer and that they come into the inpatient unit for end-of-life care. And whilst that is true, there is an awful lot more to it. So we deal with patients with many, many more conditions which are considered to be life-limiting. And some of the patients who come into the inpatient unit are coming in for symptom management and then go home again to live as well as they can for as long as they can. But apart from the inpatient unit, we have a large outpatient unit. Although we are Scotland's smallest and youngest hospice, we do a big job, and outpatients covers an awful lot of services, one of which is day services, where I'm based. We have clan, carer support, music therapy, complementary therapy, spiritual care, bereavement support, and then we have lots of outlying services like fundraising, retail, and various other things.
I mean, you mentioned it being one of Scotland's smaller hospices, but South Lanarkshire's got a population of over 350,000, so it's not a small area that you're covering.
No, it's not. And prior to us opening our inpatient unit, patients from East Kilbride who required hospice care would have gone to St Andrew's Hospice. Our inpatient unit has 12 individual rooms, one patient per room, so we don't have a big capacity, but so we find ourselves often at full capacity. But yeah, that's what we've got. St Andrew's Hospice will still take patients that we cannot get in here if they need hospice care and they have capacity there.
So you work together?
To an extent, yes. There are services that we have in common.
So you mentioned day services. Can you tell me a bit more about what that entails?
Yeah, so day services is a 10-week programme that we run for patients who have a life-limiting condition but are still living at home in the community. We deal with all sorts of conditions, from cancer to Parkinson's, MS, motor neuron disease, COPD and others. So the patients who come to us, once they've been referred, we do an assessment. We find out what some of the issues are that they are not coping with. And we find out what they are coping with. And our assessment comes up with a score. It generates a score. And we do that for all of the patients who would be coming to that group. So the patients would start and finish at the same time, so they see it through as a group. And within that 10 weeks, we will cover a number of different things, one of which is symptom management. So we might be delivering a session one day on pain management. On another day, it could be breathing difficulties or nutrition. We also, though, do some sessions which are much more about the social isolation of people. So we have feed-in from various other outpatient services into day services, and we work part of it as a team. Lunch is provided here. You get to choose from a 3-course menu from our 4 fabulous chefs. We have therapet visits, everything from our regular therapet dog visit, which we have every afternoon of day services, to the occasional therapet alpaca visit, and we've even had therapet ponies. So if you're an animal lover, come to us. Also, the patients who come to us, it's as much about helping them to live as well as possible and as independently as possible as they can. What we run is an enablement and empowerment model of care. So although it is palliative care, we're still trying to improve things to an extent. Independence is massively important to a lot of people. If they can get to us independently, that's great. If they can't, we will do our best to provide hospice transport so that they're not excluded just on the basis of that. And obviously people who are coming to us with a diagnosis of cancer can use cancer care drivers to get here. And the day runs from 10:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon, and it covers a number of different sessions over the day. We would normally start in the morning at 10:30 with a welcome cuppa and pastries and whatnot, and a catch-up for everyone. If people need a one-to-one chat with a staff member, whether it's one of us as registered nurses or whether it's one of the spiritual care team, we would try and work it into that half hour at the start of the day before we start the scheduled sessions. When we do symptom management sessions, for example, pain management, we would tend to do that in the morning from 11 till 12. And then every day services day from 12 till 12:30, we have what's called a creative therapy burst, and that's led by Anna Ludwig, our music therapist here at the hospice. And that could be any number of different things. That could be anything from her taking you away on a mental journey and playing the harp for you, or it could be her doing a seated cha-cha-cha, making clay pots, writing Japanese haiku poetry. It is very varied. And everybody starts the session by saying, oh, I can't do that. And at the end of it, they're saying, oh, look what we've done. We did it. Then 12:30 till 1:30 is lunch. And that's a very important hour of the day for the people who are coming here. Because they're coming here as individuals. They're not coming here as a diagnosis. And that's the hour of the day where everybody tries to sit round the dining table together, and we as staff and volunteers take a bit of a step back, and that's where people get their peer support from. We don't ask people to disclose their condition to anybody else if they don't want to. Most people do because they want to be able to speak freely. And you might find that you're sitting at the dining table and somebody's talking about breathing difficulties because they've got COPD, and somebody else who has breathing difficulties because they've got lung cancer will say, I had that problem, this is what I did to try and resolve it. So the condition is not the main thing, but the peer support that you get from all sharing a life-limiting condition is very important. And then
I was just going to say, how do people get referred?
Oh, so we get our referrals from a number of different areas. Traditionally, it has been through doctors and some of the specialist nurses in the community, palliative care nurse specialists, Parkinson's nurse specialists, etc. However, we have widened that out a bit so that we can take referrals from third sector groups. We work very closely with Healthy and Active in East Kilbride. We work closely with Lanarkshire Carers. So if somebody goes into them with a problem and they think it might be something that we can assist with, they might phone us and say, would this person be suitable to refer to you? It always has to have the individual's consent to do that, and we would need to contact their GP. But so these other people now can refer. We also have widened it out, and patients can self-refer, and they can do that through a couple of different routes. They can go onto the website and contact us through that, or they can call our triage line, which is 01355 20 20 20, and then they would select option 3 from the menu. And we have our drop-in services. We have a drop-in service Monday to Friday here in the hospice from about 10 till 4. And at the moment on Mondays through the month of October, we have a community drop-in service, and we're based in Hunter House Coffee Shop in Maxwelton Road, Calderwood. And that's about 9:30 till 3:30. People can come along, they can talk to us about what their problems are, what their concerns are. They can ask us how to go about referring themselves or accessing support in a number of different ways. And even if all we do at that drop-in is take their details, we will then get back to them to arrange proper referral and assessment opportunities.
Okay, Mary, can we move on to CLAN? Can you tell me a bit about what CLAN is?
Certainly. So CLAN actually stands for Compassionate Lanarkshire, and that is a service that works across 3 hospices together. So Kilbryde Hospice, St Andrew's Hospice in Airdrie, and Strathcarron Hospice, which I think is up nearer to Falkirk.
It's near Denny.
Yeah. And that came out of, I think it was big lottery funding initially. And Compassionate Lanarkshire, or CLAN as we call them, they have provided a service for patients typically who are housebound. And some of the hospice services can go into them. So they can have their assessment at home. They can then go through the same process that we would assess patients by. But if the service that they would like is available to go into their home, like complementary therapies or spiritual care, or if they want a befriender, then that's what will be arranged. However, CLAN has started to diversify in this last year, and it has been found that a lot of patients who are deemed to be housebound are not actually housebound. They might be frightened to try and get back out into the community. They may have lost contact and become socially isolated, but for some it is possible to reconnect with the community, and CLAN are trying to do that, to enable that. So they will look at what is available in the area for that person and how they can assist them to access the community again, and starting to build different services within the community, like a compassionate cafe in Lark Hall that has been started recently by one of the CLAN team. So broadening it out to try and take the hospice more into the community.
So is it trying to deal with kind of like loneliness or not enough social contact and all that kind of stuff?
Those are certainly aspects. A big part of CLAN's volunteer cohort is befrienders who will go to the person's home and have a regular arrangement where they're there for an hour or 2 hours or whatever every week. And that can provide a little bit of respite for the family of that person if they have family there who can't get out otherwise. But it is also about talking to them about end-of-life care, if they want to remain at home for their end-of-life care, if they have symptoms that are not being managed particularly well. The complementary therapy team might be able to help with that. And sometimes patients want to have difficult conversations that they don't want to have with their family. They may want to protect their family, and it can be easier to have those conversations with someone who's not emotionally involved in their life. And so the spiritual care team can often go in and provide that sort of support. The spiritual care team, it's about all faiths and none. Some of the patients may have a religion that they want to discuss. Some of them may have no religion, but they still have a spiritual side. So the spiritual care team can help with those aspects of care.
So Mary, can you tell me a bit about carer support and what that brings?
Absolutely. So we have 2 clinical support workers who are actually part of the day services team, but they have primary responsibility for the carer support. Now, if a carer is referred to us, the person they're caring for doesn't have to be referred to us. Also, they can be referred just as an individual for carer support. And that can take various forms. So one of our clinical support workers, either Linda or Stephen, would give them a call, do the assessment, find out what kind of support they need, and then that would be discussed at our MDT meeting. It could be that they just simply want support phone calls every so often. They want to be able to contact us or for us to contact them at an arranged time. We have a once a month carers cuppa, which is a drop-in, and that's on the first Tuesday of every month from 2 till 3 here in the hospice downstairs. And one of our staff will be there to facilitate that. And we also do 3 to 4 times a year, we will run an 8-week carers programme. Now that is a bit more structured. We have different speakers at each of these afternoons, and that would be everything from what happens when you become a carer and you don't know what you're meant to do, what happens if you need financial support or you need to access services or equipment, what happens if you yourself as a carer needs a bit more support, so it might be possible that they access complementary therapists. So all of these other services will feed into the carers group. We also talk about how to recognise when somebody is physically coming towards the end of their life. That's a big thing that concerns people if their loved one is going to be at home right until the end of life. So it covers a whole range of different things. We try and get them all of the advice that they need. Doesn't always follow the programme exactly because we build it around the carers who are coming to us. And if they all know about a certain aspect, then we'll move to something else. We'll talk about the things that are important to the people who are coming to us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think people look at the hospice and the care it's given to the patient, but I think the role of carers and the needs of carers are sometimes forgotten.
Yeah, it can be very difficult, and part of the problem is that the services are not always there for as many people as need them. But also, with carers, there is a tendency, and having been a carer personally as well as professionally, I recognise the tendency to put yourself last every time. So people will say, oh, there's this available to you, there's that available to you, and you'll say, yeah, I'll put it on my to-do list and I'll leave it, and you never do it. You never take care of yourself. And the thing is, if you end up running on empty, you're no good to the person that you're looking after. So you need to look after yourself as much as you can, as well as the person you're caring for, and that is a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult balancing act. We do work, as I said earlier, with Lanarkshire Carers Group. So we will signpost our carers to other services that might be of benefit to them. Some of them are condition-specific services, so we might point them in the direction of Parkinson's UK or whatever, the same way we would do with patients. But we will support them as best we can, and we will help them access other services.
So, Mary, you mentioned music therapy earlier, and I know that's something that's a very important service that's provided in the hospice.
It is indeed. Our music therapist, whose name is Anna Ludwig, which is a perfect name for a music therapist, I think.
Sounds good.
She has many strings to her bow. So she is trained in music therapy, and she, as I say, she runs our creative therapy burst every day, services day. But she is a standalone music therapist with her own caseload as well. So patients might be referred to Anna for emotional support through music therapy. They might be referred, she's trained by Parkinson's UK, and she can help people with a diagnosis of Parkinson's with voice strengthening exercises. In Parkinson's, the patient often has a very quiet voice, and it can be difficult to speak and to be heard. So Anna does voice strengthening exercises. She also helps with the mobility issues that people with Parkinson's have. So And again, that is done through music, and it can help improve or at least maintain the mobility, but patients do find an improvement. She also has training in lung health, and so patients who have breathing difficulties, she will often do a breathing class as part of day services. So if shortness of breath is an issue, Anna might provide the session on breathing difficulties and teach people breathing techniques that can help them. She also runs our community choir, which currently is here in the hospice every Wednesday afternoon from 2:30 till 3:30, and that's a community choir. You don't have to be a patient or a carer, and it's a drop-in. You don't have to be registered with us. There is a facility to join over Zoom if you're not able to be here in person, because all through the pandemic she ran the choir on Zoom. So she does all of that, and as if that wasn't enough, she also runs something called the Sunflower Service, and that is linked to, that is a service for children. If we have a patient in the inpatient unit or referred to us who either have young children of their own or grandchildren, and they are preparing for the children being bereaved of that person, Anna runs the Sunflower Service, which is for bereaved children. Sometimes she sees them before they're bereaved, sometimes she sees them after they're bereaved, and she does all of that through music therapy. And again, everything she does is researched and evidence-based, and she's done so much training. She is a big part of hospice life, and she's been with the hospice since way back when it was in the Red Deer Centre before we had this building, or as have some of the other staff been. But yes, Anna's one of the stalwarts.
Yeah, I was actually in talking to Anna last week, and I was in the music room. So there's quite a lot of equipment there that's been donated. And so that's something else that people can do. They can, if they've got musical instruments they're not using, they can donate them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it's recording equipment, whether it's instruments, she has quite a wide collection of instruments, and the patients love it. Sometimes when we do the creative therapy burst as part of day services, Anna will take the patients through to her therapy room, her music therapy room, and they will all be playing different percussion instruments and different things, and just getting emotions out through music. So yes, donations are always welcome. The other thing, she puts things on the hospice Amazon wish list for some of the activities that she does. So it might be that she's looking for a box of 50 kazoos, and that always raises a laugh with our patients. It might be that she's looking for clay for the clay pot making that she does to improve manual dexterity, all sorts of things.
So there's many ways people can actually help and support.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mary, can you tell me a bit about the social prescribing service?
Yes, that's a new service to Kilbryde, and it's a 1-year project that's running at the moment, but we are hoping that it will continue. So we have one social prescriber, her name is Sandra, and her job is to try and help patients, similar to what Clan are doing, help patients access the community. What she does is to talk to the patient, do her assessment, find out what their interests are, what their abilities are to get to different places, and then she will research what's available to them and try and marry them up. And if a person is nervous about going somewhere for the first time or on their own or whatever, Sandra will try and accommodate them and go with them or take them to that first session. So, you know, she links patients up with things like the local Parkinson's group, Healthy and Active, Sporting Memories sessions, different craft groups, all sorts of different things, and try and get people active and part of the community again.
So Mary, can we spend a bit of time talking about spiritual care and what that means?
Yes. So we have our spiritual care team. We have a chaplain who is our salaried member of staff. His name is Willie McLean, and he's been here for a few years. We also have a number of volunteer chaplains or spiritual care staff. They are a big part of the team, both for inpatients and outpatients. They have their own caseload, people who are referred to them for emotional support and spiritual needs. They also support day services. So we have, on a Wednesday, we have one chaplain appointed to run with that group. Mm-hmm. On a Thursday, we have another one. And they will be part of the day services group as well as being part of the ward. Mm-hmm. So obviously they see patients who are in times of distress or who just want someone to talk to. They also, on occasion, will do home visits, whether that's to a patient of the clan team, or they may be asked to conduct the funeral of a patient who has been here mm-hmm. for some time and built a relationship with them. They also support the staff and the volunteers, yeah. Because obviously hospice life has its distressing side. And although that's much more apparent in the inpatient unit than it is in outpatients, everybody is affected in some way. Mm-hmm. And so the spiritual care team, they support everyone. Mm-hmm. And therefore we try and support them in the same way.
Because you must get, attached to individuals and,
Absolutely.
And, it must be an emotional job for you to do.
Yeah. In outpatients, we don't see as much of the sadness mm-hmm. As they do in the inpatient unit. But we do, we used to run our day services group for 12 weeks, so 3 months. Mm-hmm. You do get to know people quite well. And yes, you do get attached to patients. And some of our patients come back and they come through day services more than once if there is a need mm-hmm. for them to do that. So it is always sad when somebody is deteriorating in their condition and then if you find out that they have died. Mm-hmm. We find that most of the families of people that we've worked with, if they have died at home or elsewhere, they will call and let us know because we've been a part of their time yeah. with their condition. So yes, there is a lot of sadness, but there's also comfort in knowing that you have done your best to make things as easy as possible mm-hmm. for them, whether that's through advice, whether it's through the sessions that we provide on symptom management, or just allowing them to have the comfort of company and whatnot, the social side of it, or whether it is that they've been in for end-of-life care. There's a huge amount of satisfaction in working with people, and it is very humbling, mm-hmm. To have the privilege to be part of that stage of their life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, spiritual care people think of as religion, but you mentioned earlier it's not necessarily about religion.
So we have Willie McLean is a minister in his own church as well as being our chaplain. We have another of our volunteer chaplains is a minister in his church. We have a nun, Sister Sophie. We have chaplains who, I don't know whether they have a religion or not, if it's just the spiritual care. We all have a spiritual side, whether we're religious or not. Your spiritual side is what makes you you. It's what's important, what matters, the things that interest you. So we all have spiritual needs, and the spiritual care team recognise and respect that. And they don't try and push religion in any way if that's not what's important to you.
Yeah. Okay. So Mary, can we talk a bit about bereavement support?
Yes. So bereavement support, unfortunately, we no longer have a counselling service here because our counsellor left to go to another job down south and it was too far for her to travel every day. So counselling is still available through St Andrew's Hospice. But in terms of people who come here, they don't have to be bereaved of a patient who was part of hospice care. It can be any form of bereavement. They don't have to have previously had any connection with us. So once a month we have our bereavement cuppa, and that's on the first Thursday of every month from 2 till 3, and that's run by my colleague Kirsten O'Neill. She's the other registered nurse from Day Services, and Moira, one of our very long-serving volunteers. Between them, they run the bereavement cuppa. And again, it's on a drop-in basis. People can come in, as often as we run it, or they can just come once. We may have 2 or 3 people, we may have 5 or 6. But it's the opportunity to come and have Kirsten and Moira present. But if what they want is the peer support from other people who have been bereaved and to talk about how it's making them feel, then that's what they do. There's no set structure to that. So they might just come in for a chat with each other, or if they're looking for advice on how they can access more support, like counselling, then, Kirsten and Moira will help them access what they need. But sometimes it's just a listening ear that they need. And it may be that they need referral to one of the other services. So, for example, if there are children involved, then it may be that the sunflower service might be appropriate for them. But in that instance, it would have to be a patient who had been, they would have to be bereaved of the patient who had been in the hospice. Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm learning from our chat today is that a lot of the services cross over.
Yes, absolutely. We have so many standalone services under the outpatients umbrella, but we do all feed into each other in different ways. So in day services, we've got music therapy feeding in, we've got clan and social prescribing feeding in, we've got spiritual care, we have complementary therapies feeding in, and then we have the staff from day services covering carers, services and bereavement. So there's a lot going on, and also there's a lot of community outreach going on now. So the staff from some of our different services, Kirsten and myself, on behalf of day services, we've been doing a lot of community outreach stuff, trying to make people aware of our services, the variety that we have, how to access them. Clan are doing a lot of community outreach stuff as well. Like I said about Laura setting up the Compassionate Cafe. Sheena is the other clan member. She's involved in a lot of stuff. She does a lot of home visits to patients. So yes, we all feed in. And we often find that a patient who has accessed one service or been referred to one service, that may not be what's appropriate for them. So we will internally refer to one of our colleagues in one of the other services. And most of these other services also have their own volunteers, as well as the staff who are here. So
there's a lot of signposting goes on.
Huge amount. It's actually part of the stats that we present to the board. Where are we signposting people to and how often? And we have connections with quite a lot of third sector organisations. I mean, for example, the Connected EK group. I don't know if you've heard of that service. That is the hospice, citizens' advice and healthy and active make up the 3 sides of Connected EK. But now there's a wider thing where there are, I think it's 6 of the churches in East Kilbride have become part of Connected EK. There's a Connected Calderwood. So we're reaching out into all of these things, and there's a lot of partnership working going on.
Okay, thank you. So, can you tell me a bit more about complementary therapies?
Yeah. We have our complementary therapists that are Janice and Louise and Pamela, and we have various others who are volunteers like Vicky and Emma. And again, they are a standalone service in that patients will be referred to them or carers will be referred to them for their service, which may be coming into the hospice and having some kind of a hands-on therapy like reflexology or Reiki or shiatsu, all sorts of different treatments they can provide. Or it may be that, for example, someone who's dealing with anxiety or sleep problems, they may need products, and those are made on site. These are bespoke products for that individual. The complementary therapies team work with the doctors and the nurses, and they're not providing an alternative. They are providing complementary therapy that will work with what's already going on. And so it's quite an in-depth assessment that they do. It's quite a complicated service. There's a lot of training and whatnot. And they feed into day services in terms of coming in and maybe doing a session on anxiety or weakness and lack of energy. So it might be that they're talking about the physical impact of anxiety. People think of that as a mental condition, but it impacts all of your physical systems, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your stomach, all of these things. So they could be talking about all of that, and that explains a lot of things to patients who maybe didn't realise what was happening. Yeah. Or it could be a relaxation session to kind of get people to level out a wee bit. It could be yoga nidra, all sorts of different things that they do. And again, sometimes if a patient has finished with us, we don't tend to provide two services at the same time in the hospice. But if a patient has finished one service and there is still a need, they might then be referred internally to one of the other services rather than go back to the beginning and go through the whole referral process again. So complementary therapies are a big part of our team.
Okay. So you also have a drop-in service. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah. So the drop-in service is really for anyone who has any questions or concerns about palliative care or caring for someone with palliative care needs. So it could be anyone from a patient who's just been given bad news over in Hare Myers Hospital who wants to come and talk to someone, or it could be a carer who doesn't know if the person they're caring for would come under our criteria. So they can come along to either the hospice Monday to Friday 10 till 4 and just ask to speak to someone, or on a Monday at the moment we're in Hunter House Coffee Shop, or so they can drop in there. Some people don't want to come into the hospice until we manage to dispel those myths. They can be a bit afraid, and that's understandable. So that's why we started the community drop-in for those that don't necessarily want to come in here. But it's the same service we're providing. We're just going out into the community. So we can take their details, find out what their problem is, and if it's not something that we can give them answers or advice on the spot, we will then contact them. If they then want to make a self-referral, we can go through that process. We also take leaflets out with us, so we can give them information away with them if they just want to take leaflets home and read them at their leisure and then decide if any of our services appeal to them, if they're going to be helpful.
So really it's just providing access to information about what the hospice provides? Yeah.
And how to access it, how to become part of our patient cohort or carer cohort.
Okay. As a charity, I know you have a number of staff and a number of qualified medical professionals, but you rely very heavily on volunteers.
absolutely. We have a huge number of volunteers, a lot of whom work here in the hospice and have a department that they are assigned to. So when we recruit volunteers, we try and match them up with the service that they're best suited to. So we have a number of volunteers here in day services who have been with the hospice for years, for over 15 years in one case. We're always recruiting new volunteers because we have so many services. So all of the services that we've discussed today, we have volunteers in one way or another. But there are also volunteers out in the community in things like retail. We have our hospice shops. We have volunteers who will go out with cans or buckets. We have our craft group who are all volunteers, and a couple of times a year we will have events where they will have a craft table set up with items to sell, to bring in for the hospice. We have volunteer drivers. Pretty much every part of the hospice is connected in some way with volunteers, and the dedication of some of the volunteers is phenomenal. You know, we have a gentleman who volunteers, I think it's 4 days a week here at the hospice.
Right.
And one of our day services volunteers is here once a week, and I think it's 2 days at St Andrews. So, you know, people give an enormous amount of their time and effort and energy to things that are very important to them. And our volunteers come from a very, very wide range of backgrounds. Some are ex-healthcare professionals, retired. Some are still at school. You know, recently we've had a couple of sixth-year pupils who have wanted to volunteer with us. So they come from everywhere and they do everything. And we couldn't survive without them.
So if people are interested in volunteering, I take it they just get in touch with the hospice?
We have a volunteer coordinator. She's just new to the job in the last couple of weeks. Her name is Fiona Swinger. And so yes, they can basically... We do sometimes do recruitment drives where we'll have an evening and put it out on social media. Obviously, we have a Kilbryde Hospice Facebook page, Twitter account, Instagram, all of the usual socials. And so adverts would go out there saying we're looking for volunteers. And sometimes it will be something specific. They'll say we're looking for a volunteer driver. And if it's for our bigger vehicle, they have to be under the age of 70. They have to have certain training. So that would all be discussed once somebody expresses an interest. When I started as a volunteer before I became a member of staff, I signed up to be a befriender for the clan service. Never actually got to visit a patient because there was a wee thing called a pandemic, and that kind of put the kibosh on so much, obviously. But yes, you know, that was a recruitment drive specifically for befrienders. But sometimes it's a broader, you know, any volunteers for any service. And some people will contact us and say, I'm at school, I'm going to go into university to do medicine, I would like to volunteer and I would like that to be in some kind of a patient-facing role. And so if we can, we will accommodate that.
So if you're interested in volunteering, just get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. We have got the website, or they can phone us on the generic hospice number, or they can phone and ask for Fiona, our volunteer coordinator.
Okay. Now, I know one of the priorities for the hospice is it needs to bring in over £2 million every year.
Yes.
So fundraising is absolutely vital to the operation of the hospice.
It is, to every part of the hospice. There are some services where there is money allocated, whether it's from the Health and Social Care Partnership or elsewhere. There is a small pocket of money. But the vast majority of what needs to happen needs to be funded through fundraising. The team are not massive, but they work incredibly hard. And again, they're very varied. They all have different roles. So we'll have fundraising for community. We'll have corporate fundraising. all sorts of different aspects to it. They run the retail side of things. So there are constantly events going on to try and bring in enough money, whether that's like our ball, which was at the weekend, which is usually a good earner. All of the different vintage teas that we do, afternoon teas, quiz nights, that's all organised by fundraising. They also have to keep a track on our cans going out to various places for collection at till points and different things. Bucket drives, trying to encourage volunteers to go out with buckets, whether it's to the town centre or they do business breakfasts to try and get corporate buy-in. I think there's a competition going on just now between different businesses trying to sort of boost that fundraising level. They recently did a Strictly Come Dancing, all sorts of different stuff. And it feeds in to, it covers the cost of most of what we do. So I mean,
it's really, there's the different aspects of fundraising. There's the events, there's corporate, there's community, there's just donations.
Yes, we get a lot of donations. Like I say, if there's cans in different shops or whoever who partner the hospice, people will just put money in. If we're out doing a community event, we will usually have a can or a bucket on the table. There are bigger ways to do it. We have an Amazon wish list, and at the corporate events, companies can pledge money to purchase something from a wish list. So the fundraising team are constantly trying to make contacts, maintaining those contacts, dealing with a lot of the publicity. They also cover all the social media stuff, working with the algorithms as to how much is enough to put out, how much is too much. So many different hats.